and welcome to a very special New Year's bonus episode of the Overly Sarcastic Podcast.
Woo.
I am Indigo, and for once I get to do the introduction, and I am joined today by your usual channel and podcast host, Red.
Hello, it's me.
And Blue.
Hello. I've also got a Cleo. I've got an adorably festive little Cleo. Come here. She's got a holiday sweater. She's the fluffiest little lump.
Ooh.
Cleo, say hi. Say hi. Hello,
Livid.
friends. Say
Hello,
hi.
Cleo. It's
Say
been so
hi
long.
to Red and Indigo and your millions of adoring fans.
Cute.
Mwah.
The offer of Cleo merch
Okay.
still stands.
Off she goes. Off she goes. That's that. Thank
And
you,
the
little
way
miss.
she goes.
Thank you
Yes,
for being a good sport. Yes, cat hair.
Oh, no.
Okay, we're good. We're
Oh,
good.
great start.
Excellent, excellent. Well, on today's very special episode, just like we did last year, we're going to be wrapping up all of the great content we made this year, sharing some fun tales around the fire, and bringing it on home for the new year. So without further ado, why don't we jump on into our first category of videos we'll be discussing, our favorite videos from this year. So this is Red and Blue's favorite videos they created. Can I get a drum roll, please? This universe's favorite videos are Antique Antics, Neoclassical Architecture, and Werewolves.
Welcome back, one and all, to the spookiest season of the year.
Where I've sequestered the full runtime of a video to gush about how goddamn cool neoclassicism is.
King Wolf founds Wolf City on Wolf Mountain and starts the Wolf Games in honor of Wolf Zeus. Ah, Latin. Wonder what the twist is.
The architects were smelling cash and glory.
Yeah, who wants to go first?
Well, chronologically, mine came first because it was like May. Werewolves was recent.
Yeah.
The Antique Antics, well, the funny thing is I only actually started calling it Antique Antics a month ago because that's when I came up with a name for the series when I did the Doge's Palace video, because I had this video just titled as Neoclassical Architecture, no history summarized, no history, it's just like that, and I'm like, I'm gonna find a title that alliterates at some point. I didn't have it yet, but it's like, so now it has a title, but until then it didn't. It was fun. It was very different. I've talked about things before. I've talked about, buildings and junk in like the top domes video, but this was the first time I really took a leap on doing a video that is not necessarily a chronological history of events, but like the progression of culture in a way, which is really cool and different, and I had a lot of fun with it, because it's Italy, and it's dumb buildings and stuff, and it's Brunelleschi being a big old diva, so, what's not to love?
Yeah, it was definitely a party. And mine was Werewolves, as previously stated, the Halloween special for this year. I'm trying really hard not to sneeze, I'm sorry. This is a nightmare.
Let it out. Let it out, Red.
No, it's not happening.
The cat comes on screen, and then Red's like...
I thought I was getting better about this allergy of mine. So Werewolves was a fun time. Just because, A, there was no way a video about werewolves wasn't going to be a party. I mean, come on. That subject is a winner automatically. It was very fun to research. It was also cool because, as mentioned, a werewolf scholar emailed us to help me out researching this video, and that was just the most beautiful thing to show up in our inbox after I was tweeting about werewolf research. It's like, wow, there's some amazing people in this world.
Yeah, because, it's one thing when you find a good source. It's another thing when a source finds you.
Yes, hello. Yeah, so that was great. And obviously the video was a blast, It ended up being about half an hour long, and I wouldn't change a thing, I'd considered cutting some bits, and I was like, no, I gotta keep in Duncan on Heinrich Kramer, because nobody likes that guy. Everyone's gotta know.
You cut the Twilight part, which was objectively the correct choice, because there is nothing that you could have really said that people don't already just, know from, background consciousness.
I'm not sure if people were aware that the werewolves in Twilight are not werewolves, because werewolves exist in Twilight and are unrelated to the protagonists who can turn into wolves.
Yes.
The Twilight Wiki's a wild ride, don't go there.
I redact my statement, apparently.
Yeah, but I was like, this is just in the wiki. They never mentioned this in the movies. I should know. I watched all of them. So it was just, cutting those 3 minutes was self-care on my part. But yeah, no, it was a fun time. It was very well received. And I'm proud of it. Yeah.
So I'm just giving some... Look at that face. Treats. There she goes. She'll have a blast.
Awesome.
I'd like to say that the treats tin that we give Cleo her treats in is a Harney and Sons tea tin with the arrested for fish crimes and also murder sticker from the Loki pin pack.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, in addition to videos that you personally loved this year, we had some videos that our fans really liked this year. You could say that these were perhaps our most liked videos of the year, or our most popular. That's the next category we're covering. Shock, surprise, what a flawless transition by Indigo. Can I get another drum roll, please, for this announcement? Fantastic.
What are you eating? Cleo.
Treats?
Cleo!
Munch?
Oh, it's...
Oh, sorry. I threw chicken in there.
Cyan threw a small piece of chicken in here.
Aww.
Got a little lost.
Oh no.
Go back in there.
We're good.
Everything's
Great.
cool. Don't worry about it.
The most popular videos from this year were Hades and Persephone and Athens City Minutes shorts.
The most frustrating part of Athenian history is that they are almost as great as they're constantly insisting they are.
Relationships in Greek mythology are almost unilaterally really bad.
They tried to do the same thing to Sparta, but 30 years of war and getting their empire confiscated showed Athens the consequences of hubris.
None of this lines up tonally with innocent flower goddess dragged into the underworld.
Yeah. Let's go chronological again. Let's start with Hades and Persephone.
The
most popular videos will always skew to earlier in the year because there's more time for them to get lots of views. But still, Hades and Persephone was an absolute banger.
I can't believe it was only this year that video came out. But yeah, Hades and Persephone was, it's a good video. It's one of those videos that I was never going to be able to get perfect. I was never going to be 100% happy with it just because the space of research about it is so... bad. Let's not mince words. It's bad. It's hard to research. It's complicated. It's contradictory. Stuff gets deprecated every other week. Sometimes it's like, well, this is a theory, but it's not widely accepted. So why'd you put it in your video? It's like, because it's a theory, and I said it was a theory. What are you talking about? But no, it was fun. It was fun to research and look into the stuff. Of course, anytime I start looking into, the Greek Dark Age, everything is going to get a little bit theoretical. So it's like, well, etymologically it might be this, which would be neat, and while we're crack theorying it up, maybe it's this, and so that was cool. It was a fun video to make. I'm glad I did it. People seemed to like it. I hope that people did not ignore my disclaimers about this is my personal crack theory, there's no evidence for it, and go into other people's comment section to be like, well, actually, according to this one person, it kind of I don't know if this is directly relevant, but it does kind of bug me when I say something and I'm like, I'm proud of this statement, and then somebody comes to bat for me and repeats my statement, and I'm like, well, now I think it just sounds silly. Like, why'd you have to be on my side with this one, man? I don't know. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but there's stuff I said in that video where I was like, this would be cool, but I don't know if it's true, and then people are like, this is categorically true, as said by Red of OSP. Direct all complaints to her channel. I'm like, oh, okay. But, no, I mean, it did numbers. That's why we're talking about it right now. Yeah. And it's always fun to kind of just deep dive into something where there's just so much stuff there. And I was like, there's so much stuff we know, and there's even more stuff we have no idea about.
It's interesting because although we often think of them as, as a bundled pair, they are on their own extremely weird for very unique and distinct reasons, Perseides and Hephany. Good God.
Hey!
Hades and Persephone
we got
have
two
their
ship
story.
names, baby.
Yeah, Hades and Persephone have their story together, of course, but Hades has his own weird Mycenaean something or other. Persephone's got some crazy pre-Mycenaean nonsense going on, so it is interesting how they ended up finding each other, not just as the characters in the mythology, but as these entire threads of gods that were known by different names in different cultures, eventually coming down together and then getting shipped by the Greeks.
It's interesting. I can't really go into much detail on this because I've only done preliminary research, but there are some gods in Greek mythology that seem to have started out separate, and ancient Greece, the culture, combined them in various ways. Not to syncretize them, but to draw these relationships between them. And obviously Hades and Persephone is one of those, because it's did Hades exist in the Dark Ages? Probably, but maybe not actually. And then, Persephone, well, she did, but was she inextricable from Demeter? You get them together. But then there's the situation with Artemis and Apollo, who are both maybe Minoan, but weren't
Maybe Minoan,
twins
yeah,
in
'cause
the
they're-
Minoan one.
They were
So-
born in the Cyclades, or the
Yeah.
Cycladic Islands, which is pretty solidly Minoan turf. It was Mike
Right.
and later, but like, when did the myth start?
Yeah, and so the idea of making them fraternal twins seems to have been a new thing, because there's not like an archetype of fraternal twin gods. There's a reason why Artemis and Apollo are unique, you know. So there's stuff like that where ancient Greece, when it got these gods, drew these connections between them in interesting ways, and I don't think we see that a lot of the time. But yes, the Hades and Persephone video had a lot of that,
Yeah.
and it was very interesting to research, even if my conclusion was similar to the later Loki one, was like, huh? Sorry, I wasn't there.
That's part of what makes
say.
it fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on later in Greek history, when we get to the classical period, we have the video from my side of things, which is a great object lesson in why getting views is not the most important thing, because
It was fine.
my most popular video of the year is objectively my worst video of the year. It was the Athens City Minutes, and it's the shorts were an experiment, and they didn't work. Because even though the core idea of City Minutes was good, where it's like, oh, like we take a look at one city in one little minute and just like go in, go out, everything you need to know. Not everything, but like enough. And then like, that's it. It's clean. There's not an ounce of fat on those videos, and then off you go. It was okay, but it was like the vertical is weird. The subtitles were kind of weirdly spaced, and it was kind of hard to read them. And it just didn't work. So we moved it around. We did it for the new version of City Minutes, the not shorts. But the shorts, since they work on a different like algorithm than regular YouTube videos, they just started doing numbers. The series announcement did the Carthage one did but the Athens one did the best out of any of my videos this year, which is just weird. It's like, okay, I guess that's the one. So yeah. Oh well.
It was fine. It was good, and it started you on, you know, the actual City Minutes series, which
Yeah.
is quite good.
Yeah,
so,
it was a step to something better, and that's one of the things that we don't often do a lot on the channel. We take a lot of experiments that tends to work out fairly well, like Detailed Diatribes was great,
Oh,
Architecture, the Antique Antics was great. Every once in a while, you have to think, I've got an idea, and then try it, and then realize how it failed. Not just like, oh, I don't like this, people are complaining. But it's like, people like the idea of the show. It's just the way that it's packaged that's wrong. Okay, we can work with that. So it's an object lesson in views not being the most important thing, but also in being able to, commit to an idea, try it out, go for it, and then if it doesn't work, just roll with it and rearrange it, play with it, and get something that does work. So it's not every OSP idea comes out the brain fully formed. Sometimes it takes an extra step.
Yeah.
But
Some
yeah.
of them you might say are a little challenging. And
A
then
little-
kind
yeah,
of-
a little challenging.
A little challenging, one could say. And on that note, my goal is to make all of these transitions as awkwardly smooth as possible.
Perfect.
The next categories, of course, are most challenging videos of the year. These are ones that Red and Blue have identified as problem children. But we love them nonetheless. So if I could get another drum roll, please. You're gonna have this down to a science by the end. The most challenging videos from this year were History Summarized Poland and Loki.
Which brings us to our first problem.
Discussing the history of Europe, East is a complicated word.
And while that theory was soundly rejected by basically everyone, Loki as Satan wasn't so easily scrapped.
Poland was living it up in a golden age.
Loki.
What a tricky
Yeah,
one to
yeah.
read.
Loki. I've been researching for about 2 years before that video went up. Not like constantly, I had other stuff going
Yeah.
on, but geez. Yeah, he's a mess.
He's a mess.
Shocker. And it's like, it's so funny that you're like, oh, Loki, one of the most famous Norse gods. I'll just go look at the, surely massive corpus of literature documenting his many adventures. And then it just ends up being like, that gif from Avatar with Zuko and the scroll? He's like, where's the rest of it? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
me with the works of Snorri Sturluson, goddammit. So anyway, yeah, it was tricky to research because it's like, all right, cool, I have all 3 pieces of literature about him and like 2,000 years of other stuff, so what do I do?
Yeah. It was funny seeing people twig onto the fact that like a Loki deep dive video was in the works as early as the first Dragon Rush streams from last year, where you mentioned that you were researching Loki, and people in the comments were like, and then a year and a half later, or 2/3 of a year later, the video came out.
Yeah, it was, oh boy, yeah. It went well, and, you know, I'm happy with how the video turned out, but it was so very, like, conspiracy board-y, and of course, you know, with anything like this, it's like, well, I'm going to try to go into the etymology. I can't. Okay, moving on. We're going to try and go into this. We can't. Fantastic. Well, let's bring up these crack theories people had, and why they're wrong. Anyway, it was like, okay, this is all the information I've scraped together that's relevant to the subject of Loki. And now it's half an hour long, and it's
Here you go.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, can I get it? What's my overarching narrative? The overarching narrative is there is no narrative. Yay, I win. Okay.
Classic Loki.
Yeah, it's an interesting
It ends up
change
being
from your
classic
most
Loki.
difficult video from last year, which was Stranger in a Strange Land, which feels like it was difficult in a different direction. So it's neat that you got to try out a different kind of challenge this year.
Yeah.
I'll admit, I prefer the conspiracy board challenge to the...
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Loki, the werewolves, and the Hades and Persephone video are all kind of in the same wheelhouse, where it's like, how does this character end up being the way they are? And then it's, you know, busting out the thumbtacks and string to try and figure that out. But
Yeah, they're all deep dives.
The deep dives are a very thin border between, like, interesting and fun and, like, yeah, and then just you spill over and it's like, wait a minute, none of this makes sense. And Loki, like, just kind of skirts the line of none of this makes sense, but it's still, like, in that realm where it's really fun and interesting, because it is an investigation rather than just figuring out, like, okay, like, what's the established consensus about thing? It's like, oh, there is none.
Yep. It gives me a certain degree of freedom, because it gave me the ability to sort of be like, hey, look, we legit don't know. Like, a lot of the time when I do the research, I sort of have to, you know, I've got the notes and then I have to polish it together and turn that into a script and sort of a nice linear narrative. But with Loki, it was like, here's my research process. You all get to live the nightmare with me. So, you know, a little bit easier that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, meanwhile, mine was not so much a thumbtacks and string, but just a difficult exercise in getting the narrative to fit, which was Poland. A very interesting corner of European history that I haven't really dug into much before. I haven't gone much west of France, in the northern parts. Well, I've done some Scandinavia, so I haven't gone southeast of Scandinavia. Cool. That fell apart as soon as I assembled it. But it was a challenge in part because I was coming at it completely blind. I've never done Polish history before. And similarly, I'd never done the history of South Africa before. I did a history on South Africa earlier this year as well, which was also a challenging video, but there was something else about Poland, because it's so hard to tell the story from Poland's perspective, because you basically are looking at any one of, like, 5 different directions where bad guys are coming from, and it's really hard to tell the story of Poland without getting looped into, you know, a side story of the Russian Empire, a side story of, like, Prussia and the German Empire, a side story of the Austrian Empire, and trying to actually, like, figure out the narrative of Poland in that and not letting it get lost between, like, all the other people who were historically always trying to just gobble up little Poland was tricky. So like, finding my footing and then being like, okay, I walk into a cold room in the dark and I have a flashlight and I point it in one direction and there's Russia, and I point it in the other direction and there's Germany. I'm like, okay, shit, and I look around trying to see what's actually in front of me.
Like a Silent Hill level.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like PT, but it's like every time a different European empire is coming to colonize you. Yeah. But it was neat. I mean, what I really liked about the history is, like, obviously, you know, Polish history is like, oh, haha, it's like everyone sits on Poland, everyone gobbles up Poland. But there's so much, like, actually cool stuff, like, in there when you get to see it. Like, the cultural history, the history of the religion, the history of the government. Like, one of the coolest systems of government in Europe. What was it? A bi-federal monarchy? What the fuck is that? It's so cool. It's like 2 states and a constitutional it's neat. It's cool.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard, it's cool, and it was worth it. But oh boy, I almost picked Britain for this one because Britain was just frustrating, but like I knew it. Like I knew what I was doing. I've talked about it, you know, a million times before, so it's like, okay, I just have to like put it all in one thing. But like Poland I was coming in blind to. Britain was fine. It was just frustrating because everybody has opinions already, and no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong according to their preconceived opinions on Britain. So, yeah, but Poland was fun. It was hard, but it was fun.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure the same thing applies to Poland. It's just there were fewer of them in our comment section.
Much fewer of them in our comment section. Because, like, since Britain went everywhere, everybody has opinions. Poland didn't, like, go everywhere colony empire-wise, so it's not the same,
like... No, it was more diaspora.
No, diaspora, but, like, there's not the same inherent grudge that comes along with, like, the concept of Britain.
Yeah, there, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Branch of my dad's family escaped from Poland at one point in the late 1800s when it was starting to get increasingly bad to be Jewish in Europe.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's funny, I don't know anything about Polish history, you know? Like, none of them ever talk about it. The gist is like, yeah, why do you think we left? And I watched the video and I was like, oh yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. It was actually, it was somewhat tragic when we were talking about this when I was researching it. You're like, oh yeah, you know, my dad's family left Poland in 1890 something. And I'm like, oh, I know why.
Yeah, every generation there's a reason to get out of Poland if you're Jewish.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't put it in the video. It was too small of a side story, but like, yeah, I know what happened that time.
Yep.
So
yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Super fun stuff. Well, speaking of fun stuff, the next category is our favorite stream series from this year, because we did a bunch of them, and they were a lot of fun, and we have opinions on which ones we think you should go back and watch the VOD for. So if I could get another round of drum rolls on the docket, I'm going to make you do it one more time, Blue, so you better get prepped. Oh, he's still going. He's still going. How long will he go for? That long. Our favorite streams was the Assassin's Creed 2 with Blue series and Dog% in Breath of the Wild. Too Fast, Too Furious is the single greatest sequel naming convention that the universe has ever given us, and the fact that more movies don't run with that is a damn shame.
Hey, bro. Wow, that was fast.
I really think all those emo hot boys are made or broken by their hairstyles, you know? Like,
I forgot about the broom. Oh.
Dog%.
Dog%, my beloved.
We raised so much money for charity on those Dog% streams. We got like a solid like $35,000 like through that.
God.
For what was it? Trevor Project, Philly Mural Arts, and Wide Angle Youth Media. That was great. That was great.
Yeah, Dog% was an absolute party. I mean,
Fun.
We gotta try more of those speedruns because we're so bad at them. But like, you know, that's a lot of the charm. It just becomes
I think the key is that on the Breath of the Wild streams, everyone who is either backseat driving or playing is equally unconstructive, and so it's just a train wreck from start to finish in the most entertaining way.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it's chaotic road trip energy, which is just so good.
It's great, and like the little bits like Traffic on the 4 with Indigo, like it was a very fun set of streams. We got Yellow on, that was really fun.
Yeah.
It was what's the word I'm looking for? The best gang assembly stream because it was one of the only gang assembly streams we did this year. Oops. But it was great. It was definitely our shining moment of gangs all here. Let's take a road trip and party.
And we actually did get to hang out with the dogs, unlike the Dragon% stream where it was like
get them in passing.
We got them eventually.
Yeah.
We got a
like
pretty
3
high
frames of
quantity
Dragon
in
in the entire stream.
Yeah.
I
think it's interesting that the two that are our favorites are our biggest, arguably the biggest production of the year, and then a much more smaller pared downstream, which is Blue Year Assassin's Creed 2 run-throughs, which are equally fun, but sort of in like a different direction. You're getting a lot more of
very
that,
different. It's a very different energy. The reason I like this one so much is that I like the idea of what it is, and obviously I like what it is just in general, because like, oh yeah, like I wanted to go to Italy this year. I didn't. I'm gonna play the game instead. Cool. Because we were trying to, you know, organize the streams, and the Dog% stuff is super fun, but like we've got to organize everybody's schedules. We got to like get this thing going. We have to plan these things out a surprisingly far distance in advance to actually make it work with the 3, 4, 5 of us, depending on who we've got. So the exact polar opposite of that is me being able to say, you know what? it's a Monday. I don't really feel like doing research today. I'm just gonna do a stream for 2 hours, and it's great. It's back to the very, very beginnings of what streaming on OSP was like when I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey when that came out. Just wow, like 3 years ago, 4.
TBC.
But 4. Jeez. But it's so cool because it's so compact, it's easy, it's chill, which is tough to do with a group because the energy of the group naturally just makes it more exciting. But that's also I'm wiped afterwards. So I really like these ones because they're just so simple and so like the pure essence of just doing a live stream. One person, a game, the occasional guest, and the chat. That's just, it's nice to have that. And having those options is really cool. So we have, the big road trip whole gang adventures. We've got OSP After Dark, and we've got, Blues, whatever the hell he's doing, whether it's Assassin's Creed or something else in the future. I like that we've kind of like figured out like the triforce of streaming. There's whole group energy, chaotic nighttime, and then chill, like wholesome library Blue with this Assassin's Creed game.
The After Dark truly just unleashes like Red and Indigo unsupervised.
Yeah.
I think what people misunderstand from the podcast is they get the impression that somehow I am the one keeping us on the rails, and that is completely incorrect. Blue is the supervising influence in this trio. Especially on stream.
It's really situational.
It's really situational.
It is.
Yeah.
Because like Indigo keeps us on time, but Blue keeps us in check. And it was really funny seeing the comments like, oh no, Blue is the glue that holds them together. Blue is the tangent guardrails that
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was me all along.
I love our slate of stream series, and I'm very excited to see which ones we pull together in the coming year.
Yeah.
Well, we got one last category before we move on to some Q&A fun, some Q&A goodness. And this category is Red and Blue's favorite videos of each other's. So this is Red's favorite Blue video and Blue's favorite Red video from the last year. So if I could get one final ceremonial drum roll from both of you. Wow, short and sweet to really wrap up the year. Red's favorite Blue video was Sappho, and Blue's favorite Red video was Miscellaneous Myths Athens.
Let's do some poetry. Yeah, that one. Let's go.
The Athenians didn't settle Athens, they were born from it, molded by it. They didn't see anything that wasn't Athens until they were already a man.
Aphrodite, help. I need help. Get in your golden chariot and get your butt over here before I die of thirst.
He strikes the ground with his trident, producing a saltwater spring, and according to some later Roman writers, also a horse.
Getting a lot of Greek rep in this one.
Yeah, we had some banger Greece videos this year, including Minoans just like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. So I starting from the start on that one, but that is getting ahead of ourselves. I really liked the Athens one because I was able to unlock like secret hidden knowledge from my classical studies that I hadn't ended up using for any of the videos because it was so niche and not related to the things I was talking about in any of my old Greek videos. So when Red, you were like, I'm going to do the myth of Athena and Poseidon and the naming of Athens, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then you were like researching it and you're asking me questions like, what's this thing about the rivers? And I'm like, Athens was the only city in Europe that was built on 3 rivers. All 3 of them are dry or paved over now, so you wouldn't know by looking at it, but...
And that's the kind of important context that the people writing down the myths didn't think to include exactly, and that I wouldn't have been able to piece together from, like, looking stuff up. It's like, well, I don't see any bodies of water. Maybe that was just weird, or maybe I could have, like, conspiracy boarded it back to the archetypical flood myth, and there were rivers. What are you doing? Yeah.
So it's cool not only because a lot of people know the specifics of the contest of like, oh, it's the olive tree and the saltwater spring. Olive tree's more useful. Great, off we go. But a lot of the backstory with like Erechtheus and all those other guys and the weird like autochthonic insert later on and all that
Yeah.
stuff when you were like, oh yeah, so there's this thing about how the king was like an autocathon. I'm like, wait, the entire city was an autocathon. Shit.
I was looking up the specific dialogue about that, and I was like, wow, what an interesting concept that everyone from this city was autochthonous. I wonder what the deal with that was, and I started reading through it, and I was like, oh, it's just ethno-nationalism. Okay.
Athens
Silly
was way ahead of
me.
the curve on that one.
Yeah, wowzers. It's like, unlike those barbarians, I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah, so, no, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely, like, short but dense. It was one
Yeah.
of those, like, it's very simple,
Yeah.
and there's only a few bits of context, but man, there's a lot of information in that context. Yeah, no, it was really fun. And on your end, the History Maker's video about Sappho is just,
Sappho.
oh, so fun,
So
because
good.
almost on the flip side, because the Athens one, there was a lot of documentation about that one, because Athenians loved nothing more than writing about how cool they were.
Yeah.
Sappho, it's like, we've got 2.5 poems, and a lot of yelling.
Fragment question
Yeah.
mark?
Yeah.
I
a lot of
rewatched it yesterday.
confused
It's
men from the Renaissance onward.
Yeah. No, I rewatched the video yesterday, and I liked a lot about how you focused specifically on how she was just a really good poet. Like, it wasn't even
Yeah.
about specifically what was she writing about? Oh, this party she went to, this lady she saw. Okay, cool. But, like, why did people remember her for, like, 2,500 years? Oh, because she's really good at what she does.
Yeah. Yeah, to be able to express the feeling of seeing someone from across the room, hearing them laugh, and then having, like, a mini heart attack and actually passing out, and being able to express that in meter is just... We gotta step,
saw-
like, the rest of literature has to step up its game, because there's no topping that.
I actually saw a point about that. Someone in the comments was like, wait a minute, so it was lyric poetry recited with musical accompaniment in sort of like a local dialect instead of the traditionally accepted, was Sappho a rapper? And I was like,
That's... I mean, I made the comparison to, like, modern musicians, where it's like, I'm not going to sing about ancient epics. I'm going to sing about whatever I was doing last week. And it's surprisingly fitting to, you know, the way that modern music works, of, like, single artist accompaniment, boom, off you go, writing their own songs and stuff. So, yeah, it's a weird setup. And then the whole history of, like, you know, what literary tradition did she come out of, like, halfway between, like, the epic, and then, you know, peak of the lyric, and then over, right before, like, the explosion of literature with Athens. And then following, like, okay, where was she translated? Where was her stuff kept? When did they start to slip? And then when did we lose it for good? It's really interesting seeing that fall, because even though, you know, classical Greeks and like early imperial Romans are like, oh my god, this is great, as soon as the Romans in the West stopped being, like, bilingual in Latin and Greek, they, like, there was nothing. It's like, oh, why would you read Sappho in Latin? Read it in Greek. Read it in the Aeolic dialect. And then in, like, the like 500s AD, the Byzantines are like, oh, shit, we can't read this. I don't speak this dialect.
No.
It's like Shakespearean cubed, with the difficulty in understanding the dialects.
it's more like Chaucer at that point, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, like,
And,
trying to read Beowulf and the Old English.
Yeah, most people only read the Canterbury Tales and Beowulf in translation for a reason.
Yeah. So it's interesting, just because, you know, we hear all the stuff of, like, oh, this lost ancient knowledge, darn, and it's like, you know, people think, oh, a fire in the Library of Alexandria. Well, kind of no. Like, there were other libraries, so it was it was a very broad effort to undo this collection of knowledge. It took time, and it wasn't, you know, barbarians coming over the hills. It was people getting lazy, slacking off on their translations, and forgetting their other languages.
And that's actually such an interesting thing, though. Like, the fact that just linguistic drift essentially... It's like there was no backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
So, you know, her work was still good, but it was stuck in this, like, time capsule where just nobody could get to it for a while.
Yeah.
And in that time, after people stopped going out of their way to preserve it, of course, so much of it was just lost because that's how it works. And now people are starting to be like, where's the rest of it? Sappho!
Yeah.
So,
we're hoping
yeah.
we'll find, like, some garbage dump where someone wrapped up, like, an old ham sandwich in, like, one of Sappho's poems, which is actually how we get a lot of ancient literature, is, like, mummies that were, like, paper-mache'd with old books.
I know some of her poetry was used to, like, stop up a wine jug and the
Yeah.
wine like ate through a lot of the paper except for a few of the lines. It's
Yeah.
blackout poetry, but
I'm proud.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that's like something the ancient Greeks thought, like, okay, if I stuff a Sappho poem into this wine, the wine's gonna really.
Have a little extra kick to
That'll-
it.
yeah, that'll make it taste extra gay. But
Extra
Oh,
fruity,
God.
one could
Yeah.
say.
and I like how you were like, look, we can't know for sure if she was only attracted to women, but like that doesn't stop her from being a certified gay icon. Like, come on.
Yeah,
guys.
which is why I used gay in the abstract, I guess, where it's like you can call her any number of things. She wouldn't have used any of those words for herself because it's like,
Yeah.
what do you mean gay? I'm Greek. That's all the information you need.
Yeah, she, you can put her under the queer umbrella without having to,
Yeah.
like, specify. It's like, look, if we don't even know where and when she was born, do you really think we're going to be able to narrow down who exactly she thought was sexy? Like,
Yeah,
come on,
like
guys.
we can't put labels on Sappho. We can read into it and for ourselves think like, oh, I would describe her as this, I describe her as this, but we can't like give her any categorical label aside from like she's definitely at least gay. Anything else is like, okay, we can figure that out, but we can't like, because we saw people in the 1800s try to do that, and it didn't work, where you get idiots
No.
like, I think that Sappho was actually chaste. It's like, sure, buddy.
Guys, as a chaste person, Sappho ain't chaste.
Yeah.
You don't see me writing poetry about how a lady laughed and I passed out.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So I had a lot of fun with that one. That's that was a contender for my favorite video of the year. So I'm glad you picked it instead. So I got to get greedy and talk about neoclassical architecture as well.
Teamwork, baby.
Yeah.
It makes the dream work and it makes OSP work. But those are our categories that we're running through in this episode. We're coming up on time for this section. But just before we go, any closing thoughts on the year as a whole for OSP specifically, and what's some stuff people could look at to kind of interact with the channel more if they wanted to?
I think it's safe to say we had some bangers this year. Like 3 deep dives. Y'all got lucky this year. This is really something.
Yeah.
We tried out a lot of new stuff, and almost all of it worked, which is crazy. Like new things we did this year: the City Minutes, the AC2 with Blue, detailed diatribes, architecture, the Antique Antics, OSP After Dark. All bangers, all absolute bangers, in their own
winners
ways that will appeal to different people, which is really cool. So if you missed any of those, I would encourage you to check out at least 1 or 2 of them that you might have missed, because there's some really good stuff.
Yeah, detailed diatribes especially, absolute lifesaver. It's like,
yeah.
oh, all I need to do is edit in like a PowerPoint? Sure.
Yeah.
You can have it.
And the You Must Be the Belmont was such a fun video. I didn't count it because it was the most viewed video that I assembled, but it wasn't a history video, so I didn't count it. But
Yeah.
You Must Be the Belmont popped off.
It was great. It inadvertently inspired a brief meme on Twitter
Yeah.
where people were editing different songs over Trevor punching Dracula in the face.
Yeah.
As they should.
Those were
As
funny.
they should. But we
yeah.
also had some great merch this year, too, that came out.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did. We had
Fun run of
we-
pins.
Yeah, we had a lot of
Yeah.
pins this year, some great ones.
many pins.
Y'all really liked the pins when they went on sale this Black Friday, which is great, so thank you for
Woo,
that.
buddy. Yeah.
It's because of pins that we are able to do a lot of fun, new, cool things and take risks, like going out on a limb and doing the Sung Wukong vinyl toy,
Oh my God,
which
my
is
beloved.
on sale forever, and you can go get it right now, no matter when you're listening to this.
Currently, it's on pre-order. It says so on the site, but
Yeah.
I just want everyone to know it's pre-ordered because, of course, it takes time to make the molds and manufacture them. But they're aiming to ship them at the end of June or July, second quarter, as it were.
2022. Yep.
So of 2022, that's right. Yeah. So, but man, I'm so happy those exist now.
Yeah, so we can take risks on things like that, which is really cool. We have a lot of other really neat ideas that we can't share right now, but oh boy, there's a lot of fun
Yep.
stuff going on. So the
many
pins
cool
were great. And I know I said this last year, but because of the pins and the Patreon, we don't need to do any sponsorships at all, except for the 2 that we really like, Campfire and World Landfill, because they're great. We love working with them. They're wonderful
Yeah.
products that
Yes.
are very useful if that's what you're
Shout
into.
out
But
those 2 products.
we don't need to take sponsors
No,
for random
no
nonsense
other
anymore, which is
products.
great because
No.
that makes for a much more enjoyable experience for all of you. I'm sorry, Red. What's that? What's that?
Oh,
What's
nothing.
that
I was
there?
just, there's just other things that we could potentially get sponsored by someday. It's all good.
I'm sponsored by Big New Year. I'm in the pocket of 2022.
Yes, Happy New Year
Yeah.
all. What a fun ride it's been coming to the end of this section of the podcast and the previous year that happened. So I guess we'll move on to the Q&A. We're not sponsored by Lucky Brand jeans, but if you wanted to DM us, I'm sure we could work something out.
They are extremely comfortable.
We'll catch you guys in the Q&A in just
I can
a
attest.
And there will be more pins in 2022.
There will
and,
many more
possibly
pins.
re-releases.
So many more pins,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Have you guys seen the little miss right here? She's been here this whole time.
Well, I was going to welcome us back to the Q&A portion of the podcast, but I think it's time for another Cleo cameo.
Oh my goodness. Indigo, what we're gonna need, we're gonna need a Cleo cam for whenever she's on screen, her own little box, separate.
Okay, noted,
Oh my
noted.
gosh.
We'll fix
hold
it
on,
in
let me
post.
scooch out of the way. I so did not notice the little miss was here.
She's
sneaky.
sphinxing out.
chilling.
She's stealthy. Oh my god.
HR's got to keep an eye
She
on
can
this.
tell you're
'cause
talking
this
about
is
her.
the most FaceTime that any of us really have with each other most weeks. We require direct HR supervision. But in case you're wondering what we're still on screen for, it's the Q&A portion of the podcast where we answer your questions from Ask OS Pod on Discord. This first question is going to come from one of our lovely patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, support the channel, consider becoming a patron for a chance for your question to be featured first in a future episode. This question comes from Myth. What is the most surprising thing that has turned out to help you in your adult lives? Whether that's advice, pins,
Yeah,
Cat.
enamel pins.
Cat.
And the cat. Yeah.
cat, enamel
Yeah.
pins. All right. So not like any life-changing advice or anything, more of just like a small object that actually worked out pretty well.
I mean, you know, in terms of life-changing advice, it's more like, wow, I'm amazed things worked out as well as they did, considering I didn't follow literally any of the rules. So it's like,
Yeah, true.
it's more like I've been taking, you know, lessons from my life rather than letting lessons guide me, since I don't take direction very well. So, but yeah, no, pins are not something I expected to play a major role in my adult life when I was little, and yet here we are.
Yeah, surprisingly, it's amazing. If you want to support the channel, go get some pins.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not on sale right now. I don't know why we're doing this.
No, sorry.
But I
Just remember.
for me, I mean, I was just looking at Cleo, so obviously that was my immediate answer. But I cannot overstate like how much of a like psychological lifeline Cleo has been for Cyan and I these past 2 years, because being in lockdown is obviously no fun, and just being able to have like another presence that just randomly does cute stuff really serves to break up otherwise very bad stretches of time and
Yes.
uncertainty and worry. So just like having a little miss, just giving her tail a mlem. This just adorable. It's just an instant shot of dopamine. And then she's been
Yep,
able to make
instant therapy.
so many other people so happy by just being cute and nice. And we did a fundraiser on the Cleo cameo video for April Fools that raised like $1,500 for like other cat shelters, like locally to
God.
me and around the country, because we donated all the ad revenue. So like, oh jeez, Cleo. So this adorable
Only
little
cats.
cat who has no manners was able to help out like so many people, us, other people online, other cats. Like, oh my gosh, Cleo's a champion. Can
She's a
we get
champ.
to 1 million likes for Cleo? Can smash
subscribe.
that like button. Like
Ring
it's,
that bell.
Everyone
it's
in the
tune up.
world subscribe.
Yeah, you guys both have better answers. I was gonna say the paint can openers you can get from Lowe's and Home Depot, because they also function as bottle openers and they can open anything. Really, they're quite useful. But also, I think the cat is probably the best of the best advice out of the three.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, this next
You're still
question.
not proper.
This next question comes from Ainsley. Too blue, and only if you're comfortable talking about it. How did you figure out you were Ace? Because you did come out as Ace this year, joining the crew on the channel.
If you remember the podcast episode where we had Daniel Green on the show, and we were talking about sex and literature, and we got to the conversation about what a sex scene between Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff would be like, that did it. That's what I knew. I'm like, no,
I wanna
this is not for me.
I want to add one thing, because having rewatched the Sappho video yesterday to freshen my memory for this, there's a bit in there where you were talking about, like, you know, not like all those romantic songs where it's like, boy, you're attractive and I sure do have opinions on it. And I was like, oh, whole ass mood right there. And then a few months later, you were like, wait, shit. So.
And also, it was partially during the Valentine's Day video when I was working on Louis the 16th. And everyone's like, now we need to ascertain the exact amount of fuckage happening in this royal palace at Versailles. Like, I want to know which floorboards needed replacing. And it's like, you guys, grow up. Oh my god. So it started with that, where it's like me, like, trying to be professional, like, wow, y'all are being really immature about this. Like, it really doesn't have any implications on, like, the actual, like, politics of the Kingdom of France dealing with, like, massive debts from the 7 Years' War. Like, y'all are just being childish here. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, this is actually something else.
Wait, are you guys actually being adult about this?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Tragedy has struck.
Yeah. So it was a process, and I realized that there was something there, like, pretty much like at the end of Pride Month, where I'm like, oh, wait, I actually, because, you know, there's a lot of, like, you know, information that gets put out during Pride Month, a lot of resources that are put out into the world, or resurfaced from previous years, and I was reading stuff, I'm like, I guess I can, like, be asexual and still, like, have aesthetic attraction and find humans, like, incredibly pretty, but not want to do anything about that. Oh, okay, cool. And then it was like, and it's July. Fuck. So I'm like, I'll wait. I'll find a time. So I waited. I figured out my terminology. I was like, okay, let me think about this. And then Ace Week came along, and then I made the announcement, and Cyan and I got married during Ace Week. What a flex. Also, October 21 Marriage Gang with Max Miller and Jose. All the best to them. That was fun to see them at the beginning of the month, and then Cyan and I were rounding out the October. So yeah, it was it was a process, because I guess I'd always, you know, I've talked about this on other podcasts, but I've always, like, felt, oh wow, people are pretty, but, like, the idea of, like, sexual attraction is like, no, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
People in music are just joking and exaggerating for effect, right? Right? And
it doesn't help that when you bring that up, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, you know, I play it up, I exaggerate, I am joking some of the time. And I'm like, some of the time? How much is some? Is it not all of the time? Because what the fuck? Yeah. And it's difficult. It's like everyone's speaking the same language, but at the same time meaning different things. It's like, wow, that person's so pretty. That can mean a million different things depending on who you are. And that can make it sound like you're all talking about the same thing, even though you're meaning completely different things. And of course, it's difficult to define yourself by something that you lack, because how are you supposed to figure out that you never experienced something if you never experience it? You know, you have to take other people's word for it. And if you assume they're joking because it would be nuts otherwise, it's like, you know.
Yeah, and having the combination of, like, asexuality and aesthetic attraction makes for a fascinating cocktail, because you end up being so straight passing that you fool yourself for 25 years.
Admittedly, you were pretty early on the everyone knows Henry Cavill's a fucking sexy man beast train, so...
I was there first with the Alcibiades video. I was on it. Y'all were late.
Everyone who had to see him all, like, dirty and grubby from The Witcher before they thought he was handsome. Grow up, guys. Come on, the jaw structure's the same.
Will not grow up. Thank you very much.
That's okay. You have a tough job carrying all the horny for all of us.
It's my cross to bear for this channel. Oh, guys, we can't get into
so
this.
that it was a process, but nothing has fundamentally changed about me. I just understand myself a lot better.
That's the mood,
which is
baby.
Great, yeah.
Awesome.
So
one of these days we'll get you a ring that fits.
Yeah. Red very, very generously gave Cyan and I ace rings for our wedding. Mine didn't fit because my hands are the wrong.
We'll get there.
Because with fencing, what happens is you get bell guarded a lot.
Yeah.
You hit your hand. You basically, like, punch other people, like, really aggressive fist bumps, but you're holding swords. So your hands swell a little bit. So it's like there's not a tremendous difference between the two of them, but it's enough that it's like half a ring size or a ring size off. So then it's
I was trying to be surreptitious about it, but, like, you know, Cyan was like, you know, if you told me, I could have told you it would have been like a full size bigger on the dominant hand. And I was like, I know, I was trying to be sneaky.
That's okay, but Red gave us beautiful dragon ace rings that glow blue and cyan for our wedding gifts. They're absolutely incredible.
I wish they were wearable. Ah,
You
my
live and you
suffering is
learn.
eternal.
The fencing hand size differential is a real struggle.
It's real.
It gets you when you least expect it.
Yeah, baby.
This next question comes from Crimson Plays. To all, on the last podcast, you guys talked about curses. So in contrast, do you guys have any blessings? For example, I tend to spontaneously have the right survival skill in whatever situation I find myself in while camping or hiking in the mountains. So what's like a boon the gods have given you that just kind of goes right for you in your life? In contrast to the curses that we described earlier.
Were the curses from the last podcast? Because
They
I
were
do not remember that at all.
So that is written into the
Not the
question.
last at the time this goes up, but yeah.
It will not have been the previous podcast episode, but it was a former episode. The podcast formerly known as OS Pod.
Gotcha. I don't know, Red, you got anything? I'm a little stuck.
Well, this is only fresh in my mind because it happened fairly recently, but I have pretty good luck at not seriously injuring myself in circumstances where I very easily could have.
That's good.
Because I recently went out stargazing late at night where there happened to be some very slick ice on rocks, and when I fell, I managed to perfectly roll over my shoulder such that neither I nor the telescope in my backpack were at all hurt.
Told me about this.
And yeah, and I'm still kind of like, how the fuck did that happen? So, and it's, like the only time I've ever seriously injured myself was when I fully fell down like half a ski slope and broke my clavicle, and all things considered, given the amount of dumb stuff I've done, it's shocking that's the only bone I've ever broken, so I'm gonna go with something's keeping me alive for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have pretty good luck baking, too. It doesn't tend to go
I
wrong.
think I have a baking curse.
You made some
too.
wonderful
Yeah.
Ace cookies the other day.
Ooh.
Those looked
Yes. Yeah, we just happen to have some ace sprinkles lying around.
I have pretty good aim, and I didn't really train to have decent aim, but not for any sort of shooting weapon. Like, if you give me a bow and arrow, it's all downhill from there. But if you ask me to throw a quarter into someone's pocket, I absolutely am going to get that quarter in that pocket. So, sort of a blessing and a curse all at
I
the
have
same
a
time.
funny story about
yes,
that.
really? Do tell!
It's not in someone's pocket, but I remember there was a guy I knew in high school who would throw coins down girls' shirts because it wasn't the nicest thing to do, I guess.
Cool.
But I remember at one point I was like, let's turn this about a little bit. And of course, he did not have the cleavage that his the people he was targeting
Yes.
did, but I still managed to slip it under his little neckline and down his shirt. And he was
Nice.
like, "Oh God, what the fuck?" So,
Nice.
yes.
Very, very
Yeah.
nice.
I think I know who we're talking about.
Let's not get more specific. Yep.
I have an answer, which is extremely useful spatial awareness, specifically navigating an area. I've mentioned this on a previous pod, but my Dead Reckoning skills are way better than they should be, given I've never trained or practiced for this. But if you plop me in a space, I am weirdly good at finding my way around, or when relevant, finding the way out. So if I walk through an area once, I've got it. Mental map making is just
Yeah.
so I told the story of the time on stream. I told the story of the time that I used an actual tower in Florence to viewpoint my way to find out how to get to another landmark halfway across the city. I was like, where is it? Oh, it's that one. Okay, so it's 3 blocks that way, 4 blocks that way, and around that circle-y building. Okay, cool, and then I made it there. So that kind of thing. And then actually being able to find out physical spacing. One time my dad and I were in Quebec City years and years and years ago. This is before reliable international Wi-Fi or anything like that, so we didn't have cell service or anything, and we had to find our way back to this one cab stand to get a cab to go back to our hotel. And we were in the middle of the old town, walking around the Frontenac, the Plains of Abraham and junk. And my dad was like, I have no idea where the hell we're going. And me, no older than 15, was like, oh, okay, so I remember that the cab stand was right by the old city walls, so if we walk north away from the Frontenac, we'll eventually get the walls, and then if we go east along it, we'll eventually run into the cab stand. And then, lo and behold, we did, and my dad's like...
Which child?
So,
Yeah.
so spatial awareness and Dead Reckoning would be my boon. You will never get lost.
I really
That's very
envy
impressive.
you that, Blue, because I get lost on one-way streets and have lived on gridded cities my entire life, and it's still a problem.
It's really fun for travel because you can just walk out of your hotel, wander around somewhere, get vaguely lost, and then find a thing in the distance to orient yourself with, find your way back, and just have a lovely little adventure. It's so much fun.
yeah.
Best way to enjoy a city.
I get lost.
I'm
in
so bad at
cities.
that. If we get off of a street I've been on before, then I'm just going to be completely directionless. I'm
Yeah.
like good at small scale spatial awareness. Like if I'm in a space with people and things, I will usually be able to navigate just by like, with my eyes shut, just by sound and like the feeling of like, there's a chair here, isn't there? Oh shit, there is. But no, anything bigger than that, who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
I have my one other boon I just remembered because of Cleo, which is that I am pretty good at getting people's pets to like me, like a lot.
That is an important
Like,
boon.
I just get on okay with
Yeah.
animals, and it's just aw. Yeah.
Very good. Lot of good blessings that we've been bestowed upon us by the gods this morn, what have you. I'm in a weird mood. It's a Tuesday, then we're recording this. Whatever. Pull back the green curtain and reveal the wizard behind it. This next question comes from Potato Chips. For Red, how did you develop your art style over time? It's super streamlined and very pleasing to look at. So how did you develop the art style that is so iconic from the channel and from Aurora?
Thanks. It didn't start out streamlined and iconic. I'll tell you that much.
Never does.
I do remember when I was little, I tried to just give myself an art style. Every artist I knew had a style, so it had to be a thing. And I was like, I'll just start doing it like this. And my mom was like, that's not really how it works. I had a lot of access to newspaper comics and stuff like that. And of course, a lot of newspaper comics do, kind of Calvin and Hobbes style. Everyone's like a noodle person with little beady eyes. And I was like, I could do that. That's not complicated. But it didn't it was okay. And then I found the old collection of Shonen Jump that we had in my old house. And it's like, oh, wow, this is completely different. And if you've ever tried to draw something in a style that you're wildly unfamiliar with, you're going to know the true depths of pain because it never goes the way you want it to. And essentially, and it's important for context that the only art training I'd had at the time was life drawing. My mom had basically sat me down with a bunch of skeletons in the field museum and was like, now draw that. And I was like, okay. I just get really bored drawing all the vertebrae, but it was, it develops the sort of spatial awareness and a sense of dimension and anatomy and basic how to handle a pencil and shade with it skills and stuff. And then I was trying to go from that to newspaper comics to anime, and it was just not working. But it did give me a lot of ingredients for a later style I might actually be happy with. I ended up sort of chucking out the window the idea of I'm going to do this cartoon style, I'm going to do this anime style. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to draw. We're going to try to draw from life. We're just going to go back to that and see what we can do. And then it was a matter of taking the life drawing and stylizing it. And when I was in the process of doing that, I found those Hi, I'm Daisy Metal Gear comics, and they completely wrecked me again because suddenly I was like, whoa, little stylized chibis, ingenious. And suddenly I was trying to do that too. It was just a mess, it was just a whole bunch of different things. And of course, the first time I ever did the chibi style was when we were doing the Iliad video, and I was like, I'm not good at this. I know I'm not good at this. But there's no movie I can use because Troy is a tire fire, so I'm going to have to draw it anyway. And just the act of drawing 200 frames for that one video kind of helped streamline it just a bit already, make it easier for me to figure out what parts of the style I liked and what parts I didn't. So one of the main weaknesses of the chibi style is that with the body so small, you can't really do much posing-wise. It's like if the arms and legs are just little stumps, you can't really get a lot of complexity in the shape. So as that sort of streamlined, I was like, okay, the ability to pose and move a character is very important to me. So the head is still big, but the body is a lot more complicated now because it was what I needed it to be. And honestly, in terms of style development, it's really just I've done so many drawings. Just for the videos, it's the shortest videos are still 20 individual drawings. And the longer ones can get into the high several, few hundred usually. And once you do anything that many times, you will get better at it. So just the basic, I'm going to draw the line I want to draw, you get better at that the more you do it, I always have my hand over the undo button, but I have to use it a lot less these days.
Yeah.
I think it's also telling that as the videos have gone on, you see the heads get smaller and smaller and smaller as they get more to regular proportions. Because in the Iliad video, it's extreme chibi style. The heads are almost bigger than the torsos, but even within a year or two, it gets to the point where you had the bodies at a size where you can actually pose them dynamically.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if the head is too big, the hands and arms can't reach over the head, which means I can't do the pose I love where the person's carrying a person over their head. I need that pose so much that I had to make the head smaller. And And then, of course, I was like, I'm ready. I'm going to start the comic. And I can't look at the early chapters of the comic. They hurt my soul. But, all the basic skills are there. It's just a matter of polish and just sort of becoming comfortable with the individual, the style and how I'm drawing the individual characters. And after that, it's really just like, there are like several hundred art tutorials I've seen and then just like incorporated the pieces of it that worked. So, I use cell shading whenever I do full color, which is not like gradient shading. It's like the way they do it in cartoons. Like you draw a hard edge for the shadow and you fill it in. I find that much preferable to me than gradient shading, so I use that one a lot more. And I picked that one up from a tutorial, which was the first time I learned about layer combine modes in digital art because I've never read the instructions on anything in my life, so I didn't know that was a thing. And then, it was really a matter of experimentation. And I think ultimately there is no clean way to develop your own art style. It really is a matter of just lots of practice, drawing a lot of stuff you care about, and figuring out what you want to draw. Because every style is good at different things. And a lot of them are bad at other things. I'm not good at backgrounds. I do them because I have to. I'm not good at it, and I can't sit down and draw a detailed building facade because it bores me. It just doesn't work. But I know some artists that can just, they clearly love drawing and painting detailed backgrounds, and like the human figures are like an afterthought. I had a mini crisis when I was watching Howl's Moving Castle for the first time in a while, and I was just watching one background shot that was on screen for 3 seconds tops, and they never revisited it, and it was a whole ass painting you could have put in a museum, and I was like, why? Who are you? What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
It's, your styles are good at different things. And what you want to use the art for is going to sort of shape what it becomes good at. And I think you need to let yourself be open and flexible to new things. But also, when you look at other people's art, you can see how they're doing stuff and internalize that. There's nothing wrong with that. One of my favorite things to do is look at someone's really polished art style and be like, you grew up watching Sailor Moon, didn't you?
Trying to figure out what they started drawing fan art for, and then later went on to develop their own style from is such a fun
All the ones
activity.
I know are Sailor Moon, Disney, Warrior Cats. Those are the three that I've seen and the people I know.
Interestingly, it works the same way with literature as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, letting your style develop is so important because you cannot lock yourself in. And this is a part of why I have trouble rereading the early chapters of the comic, even though we're only 15 chapters in, is like, things have drifted enough that they look weird to me. The people reading are just like, wow, look, you can see her go from good to better. But I'm just like, it's you're never going to be happy looking at your old art, but you're still going to, all the skills are still going to be there. I don't want to keep going on about this forever, but I could.
Yeah, well, on that note then, this next question comes from Green Arrow 0116. What would be your advice to a channel just starting out?
Woof.
We actually send out this email every once in a while. Sometimes people ask us for advice on starting a new channel. So we give a lot of the technical specs of we use this and this microphone, we use this software, and some of the stuff is, people are curious about the tech specs, but the general point we try to make is that the tech specs are almost irrelevant. There are channels that do, incredibly complicated work on the audio and the visuals, but the fundamental content in the channel is bad. And there are channels that have very simple art styles, very, minimalist constructions, maybe not the best microphone quality, and it's amazing to watch. So tech specs are something, but don't hang up on that as like the first thing you do. Be willing to get better at that as you go, because obviously you want to improve, but don't think that like starting with the best equipment and the best software is like you can do whatever you need to accomplish on pretty much like any software, any hardware. We started off recording our videos on this nonsense, like Apple.
Well, I didn't.
I did. Because I didn't own a microphone yet. But it's about the
technical specs are important, but like you can always improve your tech setup. You don't need to get that perfect right out the gate.
And that's always something you can compensate.
It is more important.
That's something you can compensate for with time and experience too, because lower quality equipment with someone who's just practiced a little bit is going to sound better than lower quality equipment the first time you ever use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note, like, kind of tying back into the last question, it's like you can't nail your style right out the gate. It just doesn't work like that. It's always an iterative process. Whatever you do the first time is the first approximation of what you're going to want to do. I think especially when you're starting out, the most important thing about your channel is to really solidify what you're doing and why. Because ultimately, it's going to take your channel time to grow, and it's going to take you time to get better at whatever it is you're doing. The most important thing is to be able to stick with it because you enjoy it. So if you're doing something because you're like, I want my channel to get really big and make me famous, it's like, okay, but what are you doing and why? It's like, well, whatever gets me views. That's not something you're passionate about. That's not something that gives you energy from the creation process. So whatever you make has to be something you genuinely enjoy making. I've seen people do speed paints. I've seen people play video games. I've seen speedrunners. There are people who get a lot of energy out of researching and retelling fandom drama. Whatever you're doing, as long as you like it and can stick with it, you don't need to stick to a regular upload schedule, although it does really help. As long as you can just stick with it without it burning you out, that's really the most important part. Everything after that is just you getting better.
Yeah, make something you want to make, and I like to say make something that only you can, because there are a lot of people who just try to copy what someone else is doing, and it's okay to take inspiration, but make something that only you can with your unique combination of interests and skills and talents and things that excite you, and be willing to let the first couple be works in progress. You will look back and you'll think they're bad. That's okay. Because if you focus on trying to get a perfect video right out the gate, you're probably just gonna work yourself up into a knot and then get stuck and think, oh, well, screw this, done. But if you're willing to just finish a project, get it done, and then start a new one and iterate, you'll get better with every completed project that you get under your belt and in your experience. So start and just do it, just try it, and then you'll learn things from the process of doing it again and again and again that you wouldn't learn if you spent that much time laboring over one video that you're still probably not going to be thrilled with in the end anyway. That's Hank Green's 80% rule, which I've been mentioning a lot recently because it's useful, but yeah.
There are a lot of channels that I follow that found something they liked to do early on and have stuck with it with minimal changes. Like, just kind of thinking back, at this point, YouTube is, I won't say getting up there in years, but, it's over a decade old, because our channel's nearly a decade old, and that's terrifying. But, there are people who I've been watching since the very beginning of that, and some of those channels have disappeared, and some of them have changed a lot, and some of them are just, completely the same, like coelacanths. They haven't changed since, the Precambrian. It's like, I can watch a new Zero Punctuation, and it'll be exactly like an old Zero Punctuation with a better mic. I can watch a new Todd in the Shadows, and the same deal, and they work like that because they're good, they're solid, and the creator likes doing them. And that's such an important thing, whatever you're doing with your channel, and it doesn't need to be one specific thing. There are also, variety channels that just kind of do whatever the creator wants to do. And those often work really well because it's just like that person sort of flexing and feeling out what they want to create and what they're good at and what they can improve on. And, if you're just starting out, I'd say don't lock yourself into anything too solidly. It's easy to sort of tie yourself down to a formula and then feel like you have to stick to it. And anytime something like that happens, it risks becoming enervating to work on. You just tire yourself out because you give yourself these artificial obligations that you have to follow, which is why, we didn't start doing regular Friday uploads for a while.
It's 3 years
it
or
was
so.
Completely. Yeah, it was totally unfeasible early on when it was just me. And then even when it was two of us, it was still kind of I was taking months to crank out a video. I couldn't multitask. I was also in college. I couldn't do more than one video at once at the time because I hadn't refined my workflow. Right now, I have 5 videos I am currently working on, but that's unusual. Normally it's a lower number. But I couldn't have started out like this. And I couldn't have started out like this, especially before I'd refined my art style, before I'd gotten the process going, figured out the shortcuts I used. You got to give yourself time to grow, and you can't box yourself in too quickly. You don't know what shape your channel's going to take. You need to let it grow a little first.
I also feel like an important thing to address is the forgotten group of people in the conversation of YouTube channel advice, because most YouTube channel advice is given to someone who has not yet started a YouTube channel. There are a lot of people who've been at it for kind of a while and are in that medium space of roughly, let's say, about when Red was starting on the Iliad and the Odyssey video, and I was just joining in with my first few history videos, and we were doing it, we knew how to make videos, but it was still very solidly a hobby. And there's that entire space of the YouTube hobbyist who no one ever really gives them advice because it's difficult to give advice to that group of people, and the people who are usually asking for it are the ones who are starting a channel and don't even know where to begin. So there is an entire group of people in that tranche who are unfortunately tough to help with specific advice, because it's a weird space where every creator in that like hobbying phase needs something completely different. Like when you're starting out a channel, you need the same advice to start you, like how do you make a video? But for the hobbyists, it can be problems of scheduling, it can be problems of motivation, it can be problems of feeling like, oh no, I've already done everything that my initial plan for this channel like allows for, and now I've basically like wound through the entire catalog, and I guess I'm done. What do I do now? Like I've done all the ideas. There's that whole thing. So right, I don't know if you have anything to contribute to that. I just kind of like took us on a tangent, but I feel like that is a space of YouTube creator that is often left behind, and even some of our peers have been like, yeah, like. They give you advice on how to start a YouTube channel, but after you're like no one gives you advice on how to manage a channel once you're at like 100,000 subscribers. It's like, okay, you're good, have fun. It's like, no, like that tier of YouTubers also needs advice, because then you're into like the business phase and no one teaches you how to do that. So it's unfortunate.
I don't want to go on this too far because the question was specifically like, I'm just starting a YouTube channel. But yeah, no, you're totally right. There's this whole bunch of just YouTube channels that have gotten a decent starting, like, you know, a base of viewership. You know, they have an audience, but they're sort of running out the thread of that first wave of why am I doing YouTube in the first place? And like, you know, a lot of those guys, it really is a side hobby. I know a lot of people who are like artists who have YouTube channels that they haven't updated in a while because they're like, yeah, now I'm working as an official storyboard artist on, you know, major companies. Like, oh, okay, nice work. But, you know, for people who are trying to sort of focus on into YouTube rather than sort of pivoting away from it, it's, you know, it's a matter of managing your own mental health, because ultimately the quality of your art is dependent on the quality of your mental state. You really cannot make good art if you're burning yourself out to do it. So, you know, you got to sort of manage both you and your channel. Otherwise, you know, something's going to give, and then the channel's going to have problems anyway. Managing schedule, people will try and be like, okay, our current stats tell us that the algorithm is favoring this. It's like, it's never a good idea to play to the algorithm. It never works. It's always incredibly unstable. Whenever they change the algorithm, it leaves all those channels in the wind. So, like, you know, last year, I don't know if anyone remembers this, it's been so long, you know, one of the longest years, but there was that whole thing when YouTube kind of had to put in all that, like, child safety stuff, and all those really exploitative, like, kid channels that were just unboxing toys were like, our income, and it's like, maybe you shouldn't have been exploiting 6-year-olds for clicks then. How about that?
But
you know, it's so don't try to play to the algorithm. Just focus on doing stuff that you enjoy, and again, you know, the art that only you can do. I feel like that's the kind of the phrasing makes it sound more intimidating, because it's like, what is the art only I can do? It's like, dude, just do what feels right. You'll get something unique. All right, if you're not trying to play to the crowd or the algorithm or, you know, the tropes or whatever, you will create something unique to you just by virtue of being a unique
kinder
person.
version of that is make what you want to make. Not just like, oh, make what you want, but make what you personally want to make. On
that specific note, the comic I'm writing is the story I wanted to be able to read when I was 10. Yeah. So, like, you know, 10-year-old me can never read that story, but I can still make it exist, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Really, really great advice. This next question is going to be significantly less helpful to the viewer, but I think will provide some enjoyment for us. This comes from Pixelkind to Red, Blue, and Indigo. In regards to the legendary phrase, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, which of you is which? I.e., who would be gaslight, who would be gatekeep, and who would be girl boss?
Though your face is telling me you haven't run into this one.
I know what all of those words mean individually, but I didn't know that they were a squad.
You don't gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss?
You don't frequent Tumblr?
Mercifully, no.
And the parts of Twitter that have escaped from Tumblr's containment field?
So I think that this puts Blue into either the gaslight or the gatekeep category, but I don't know which of the two that would land him in specifically. You know?
Don't even talk to me about Dante if you can't speak Italian.
What are you talking about? There is no gaslight gatekeep girl boss face. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a tough one. I guess the question is who gets the coveted title of girl boss, and then who has to deal with the dregs.
Yeah, someone's got to be the big guy. Someone's got to be the Lancer. Someone's got to be
it's the 5-man band quantity all over again. But
it just never goes well.
Oh man, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. It's just so fun to say.
Of your friend group, which of you is the most likely to gaslight the others?
Which I guess
I don't know. It's a fun question. I just don't think we can possibly give it a proper
No,
answer.
I don't think so.
Your party comp is insufficient. It's all girl bosses. You need at least one
all
gatekeep
girl.
in there for team defense.
Girl boss. I can't take this seriously.
Oh no.
Okay. Well, honorable mention to the question. We enjoyed it quite a
sorry.
bit. Blue, go Google what Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss is after this podcast.
Okay.
It won't help.
I'm sure it won't.
Oh boy. Well, we got time, I think, for one last question anyway. We're sort of coming up on time. And to bring it back to our old favorite, the time heist, this kind of ties into
yes.
something we discussed about it on a previous episode. Weird Space Dragon asks, to all, a time heist question. It has been stated multiple times that at some point of the movie, the gang accidentally kidnaps Tripitaka and a B-plot of monkey hunting you down occurs. My question is, how did you end up in a position to accidentally kidnap Tripitaka in the first place? Also, do Sandy and Pigsy and the horse, I guess, have any role in this B-plot? This is more
no, they
slander against my boy.
No, yes,
the
they
horse.
do.
They have to.
Here's what I'm thinking. I think that the rest of the squad is like cartoonishly always really late to the party. So like right after we've left and the place is in flames and they're like, I think I saw them that time. They went that way. Yeah. So they're just always perpetually late to the plot. As a running gag of sorts. We obviously put them in the after credit scene, but then in the second after credit scene, that's when we do the lead in for Time Heist 2, All Roads Lead to Rome.
Of course.
Yeah. Let's see. The
we
question was how did we
end up
Tripitaka in this
accidentally
scenario?
abducting Tripitaka? Yeah, I'd imagine this is in the process of getting the rest of our the rest of assembling the squad.
Like
so
maybe it's like a time machine glitch or something. We end up
the
just
time
very
machine
briefly.
would take us to ancient or medieval China. It's not entirely clear. And what situation would we end up with Tripitaka? All I'm thinking of is the Kingdom of Women because it's top of mind since it's the one that just came out, but I don't think
Very
that's going to be useful for us.
The time machine replaces the horse. They like swap places in the multiverse for a second, and then when it leaves, it takes Tripitaka with it. I don't know.
I think the easier solution is that a demon was in the process of kidnapping Tripitaka and we accidentally run him over with the time machine and like the sack Tripitaka's in like ends up in the trunk and we don't see it for a while. And it's like, hey, whose luggage is this? Then we like open it and it's like, ooh, this is a problem. And then we just have like Tripitaka in the back of every shot eating chips or something. It's like,
It's like-
I got him
It's
some
like
snacks.
we teleport in, and then there's the top half of a demon on the floor of the time machine.
Oh no!
Like,
Tripitaka's
what
in the
happened
trunk.
here?
The machine teleports out, and we stay on the shot of the demon's lair, and it just like pans very slowly over, and you see Monkey having just arrived, staring down the time machine. Zoom in on his face.
I think the,
Eyes go angry.
the only alternative is if we've like split the party at this point and like Sir Dinadon and like Maid Marian are like off doing their own little shenanigans with somebody and like in the process they accidentally like, oh, they kill this demon, grab whatever it was carrying, maybe there's something good in there, and then when they get back to the time machine they're like, all right,
this
you can't be
dude.
mad, but
Yeah, we were going to give this back to the poor, but it's a person.
yeah, it's a person and he's saying he needs alms, so I feel like it would be like diminishing returns to give him to the poor. Anyway, we're
That's
just like,
that's it. They accidentally
that's
steal
And
him
we-
because he's in a sack. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
yeah. And we can't turn the time machine around because we're like where we were going and like it's got a cooldown or something. So we just got to keep him entertained until we. And of course, I think it's important that none of us can speak Chinese, so we just fully can't communicate with
That's
him.
true.
Oh my god.
And it's just
'Cause
like
in canon, the Indigo
okay.
character comes in, well, I think, like the third movie or something, and I think I'm the only one in the group
Yeah.
who speaks any Mandarin, so y'all be on your own.
yeah,
Yeah, no, we're totally
I
toast.
absolutely can't.
Which I guess implies
so
that we
screwed.
need to be able to speak Italian. Okay, I'll get that.
Italian.
And then Old English to be
Old
able to
English.
commune with the knights.
We can manage Old English. It's like regular English, but with a golf ball in your mouth.
The
It's not
Night
that
Before
bad.
Christmas taught me that even if they're from the 14th century, they will adapt to modern lingo very quickly, so I think you'll be able to handle that one.
Oh yeah.
Or it turns out we
Easily.
get the slightly wrong iteration of the Arthurian Knights and Dinadon speaking French.
You could get the version of them
Ah,
from The Kid
dang
Who Would Be
it.
King, where they were all played by like regular British 10-year-olds instead of like actual knights, and they're just all using a lot of British slang, so it's equally as difficult to understand, but just in a completely different direction.
Yeah, they say ceiling instead of roof, and we all get confused.
That one gets me. Shout out to Tim from our New Zealand friends. Excellent.
I feel like
I love
that,
finding.
that's it. I
Yeah.
think that's a good
I like
one.
the
because
through line of the sack.
Yeah.
I think that's a
it
good...
doesn't require a lot of screen time too, which is great,
Yeah.
because for like the rest of the audience, like it'd be fairly innocuous. It's like, oh, they just stole this bag, and then it's the reveal that it's Tripitaka to the gang and then to the audience too. So it works on.
It's a
there's no
visual
dramatic
gag.
irony, so it's a
Yes.
yeah.
Show, don't tell.
But we do get the dramatic irony when we cut back to Monkey,
Yes.
who's like, clearly those fiends have stolen it. It's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So many options, all of them
What a
good.
wonderful script we've begun to pitch in this session today. Well, that brings us to time on this very special New Year's bonus of the Overly Sarcastic Podcast. Red, would you like to improvise an ending for this? It's sort of our only bit, so I feel like we shouldn't abandon it even just because it's a bonus episode.
I can give you a drum
You're
roll if
starting
you'd
to
like.
predict it.
Yeah.
No,
Do
no,
the
there's
drum
no
roll.
need
No,
for
the
that.
drum roll's
Okay.
very important.
You-
Blue?
Cool. Good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Yes, excellent. All at once. Speedrunning strat. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. If you're watching this on YouTube whenever we put this up. As always, the links to the channel are in the show notes or in the description. And if you're watching this on YouTube, next to the part with our logo and the text that says Overly Sarcastic Productions with a little check mark, that thing. I think you know how this works. My God, what do I normally say when this is happening? As mentioned, there's merch, all that stuff. Look into that. Vinyl toys. There will be pins again. So it has been, and so it shall be. My goodness. Normally I'm better
Are
about
you?
this. I think it's because I'm facing the other way.
you?
I am. Normally I'm super professional and badass.
Normally,
and
Red
cool
goes
and
off
stuff.
on her tangent, but there's purpose to it. There's
true, there's
motive
some-
and
Yeah.
a strong through line.
And I don't need to stare at myself accusatorily the whole time I'm rambling. It's much easier to get in my head when I'm not like having to gaze into the abyss at the same time.
Just imagine you're talking to Cleo. Just talking to an old friend.
Oh,
She's right
that's
here.
such a better idea.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Cleo.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me just full screen this
Little
bad
miss.
boy so I can really get into
Little
it.
miss.
Come on. There she is. She's looking at me. Oh, it's so
All right,
beautiful.
Clay, I'm going to hold this right here. Look at the camera.
All right. So, we come up with regular episodes every couple weeks. Since I don't remember when this is going up, it'll probably be another week or so before we can see it. Oh, yes, there she is. Oh, man. Okay, this is not helping with my articulation. Okay.
Good. Just give it to Cleo then.
Yep.
Bi-weekly
There we
podcast. We already covered
Yeah.
that part. YouTube,
Got
already
it.
covered that part. Merch, we're good. All right. Until next time, I've been
I've
Red.
been Blue, and that's been Cleo.
Yes, and this has been an Overly Sarcastic
Happy New
Podcast.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Woo!
All right, good work, team.